कि महंगाई सिर्फ पाकिस्तान का इशू नहीं है, कि ये अब एक कोरोना की वजह से दुनिया के अंदर जो सप्लाई शॉर्टेजेस हुई, ये अब उसकी लहर आई हुई है और इसमें पाकिस्तान अकेला नहीं है मुलव्वस।
Mia Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif Saab is declared to have been elected as the Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Hi everybody! Pakistan is facing one of the worst economic crises in its history. And while most people and journalists are blaming Imran Khan for this condition, what we do not realize is that Pakistan's downfall has been happening since 70 long years. In fact, Pakistan has been consistently facing economic crisis ever since its partition from India. And in the past 30 years itself, the IMF alone has bailed it out for 13 times. And just like Sri Lanka, the Pakistani economic crisis has got some very important lessons for us, the citizens of India. So in this episode today, we are putting out the simplest possible explanation as to what exactly went wrong with Pakistan, how did the leaders of Pakistan make some terrible decisions that have ruined the country, and most importantly, as Indians, what are the lessons that we need to learn from Pakistan so that we never ever let India face anything like this. This video is brought to you by Hirect, but more on this at the end of the video. The first and the most obvious reason for Pakistan's failure is political instability. Long story short, not a single prime minister in Pakistan has completed his or her term. The country has been swinging between democratic and military rule, and during the democratic rule also, every single leader who comes up first tries to rectify the mistakes committed by the previous leader, and by the time they start acting on their policies, they are overthrown by another entity. For example, in 1978, General Zia took over the Pakistani government with a military coup. And as soon as he came to power, he banned the unions, censored the media and took up very heavy loans from different entities all across the world. But after he died, Benazir Bhutto took over, and by the time she reversed the ban on unions and gave freedom of press, she was overthrown by Nawaz Sharif. And this has been happening since 70 long years. And when this kind of political instability exists, there are three major drawbacks that kick in for any country. Number one, even if you've got valuable assets like labor and skilled workforce, foreign companies will not set up the units in your country. Why? Because if a company sets up a manufacturing unit in your country, the existing democratic government might levy a 10% tax. But tomorrow, suddenly if there's a military rule, the dictator might impose a 50% tax or even change the economic policy itself. This would make business extremely unviable, because of which foreign companies will not bother to come into such countries. Secondly, since every leader who comes in knows that he or she could be overthrown, their sole focus has only been on power struggle rather than actual development. In this case, if you see, more or less every freaking leader of Pakistan did something or the other to attack India or to bash India. And this is because they thought that they could actually unite the Pakistanis with the anti-India sentiments. As a result, we saw not just verbal bashing, but also bloody wars and killings of innocent people both in India and Pakistan. And lastly, because of both these problems, the economics of Pakistan took a massive hit, which again needed loans to recover. But since there was very less scope for income, they needed more loans to recover from their existing loans. This is the first reason for Pakistan's past, present and future economic crisis that we're about to witness in the next 10 years. By the way, this is in addition to the 4 super costly wars that Pakistan has fought against India. And this brings me to the second reason, and that is something that is even bigger a problem for Pakistan's crisis, and that is Pakistan's war brokering business.
लाए पूरी दुनिया से, हमने तालिबान को ट्रेन किया, उन्हें वेपन्स दिए, उनको अंदर भेजा, वो हमारे हीरो थे।
ठीक है।
ये जो हक्कानी है, हीरो है हमारा जी।
ठीक है।
80s का हीरो है।
बिल्कुल।
ओसामा बिन लादेन हमारा हीरो था।
CIA का भी था शायद।
यस, ये ज़वाहिरी हमारा हीरो था। तो माहौल अलग था।
To understand this, you have to understand how terror groups actually function. Now, this might sound a little weird to you guys, but terror groups actually work like labor outsourcing companies, or you could even call them the freelancers of the international politics. Now, let's try to understand this using an analogy. You see, in the US, there are these huge companies like Microsoft, Google and Uber that build software products. Now, amongst many of these companies, there are departments like customer support and software services that often require a huge amount of workforce. So for this work, instead of setting up an in-house team, they outsource the department to an Indian company like TCS and Wipro for software services, and for support, we've got the international call centers. Now the question is, why do they exactly do that? Well, that is because if they hire an American in America, they have to pay her $10,000 a month, whereas they only have to pay $1,000 to an Indian engineer working from India. So they save a ton of cost. Secondly, if they hire in-house employees, they have to give them health insurance, rent or buy an office space to accommodate these employees, then set up a management team to manage the staff, and then pay for the employee perks that cost the company lots of time, money, and resources. Whereas, if they outsource it to a company like TCS, TCS will take complete responsibility of the project, TCS will hire and fire employees, rent the office and manage the office staff, and overall, it will do the entire operation such that the projects could be completed on time. And this is being done without passing on the worries to the American company. This way, the risk of human resource management is actually transferred to TCS at 1/10 the fee of an American employee. And lastly, if an American company hires 2,000 employees, it cannot suddenly lay them all off if they do not perform well, because it will be a black spot on the reputation of the company. And on top of that, the company also has to pay these employees 6 to 12 months of salary as severance package. Whereas, if it is a third party like TCS, the American company can directly fire TCS and hire another company to do the job better. So to put that straight, the American companies have transferred the risk and pain to the Indian companies in exchange of revenue and business. And if you look closely, this is very, very similar to how terror organizations actually function with countries. For example, in 1979, the Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan, and the Soviet-Afghan war was going on from 1979 to 1989. So guess what? The United States obviously wanted to enter Afghanistan to oppose the Soviets. But the catch over here was that if the American army deployed its own soldiers, it would be very costly and very risky. Why? Because firstly, the United States is accountable for every single soldier's life lost. Plus, they have to pay their salaries, they have to pay for food and every other expense including the pensions. Secondly, if the American army is deployed, they have to build cutting-edge defense township and barricades to protect the life of these soldiers. And lastly, once the American army enters the battlefield, it will be officially known that America is being involved in the matters of other countries. So if something terrible happens, which it kind of always does, it would be a black spot on the reputation of America. So guess what? Instead of sending their army to fight, just like American companies outsource their software services to companies like TCS and Wipro, the American government outsources the military project to a third party which provides human resource to execute the exact same actions at dirt cheap cost. These parties are none other than militant groups, rebels, terror groups, or whatever the media calls them. These groups have their own agendas and they use the supplies of these countries to fulfill them. In this case, the entity that America outsourced the work to were Mujahideen fighters. And just like there are training centers that train the candidates in certain specific skill sets to serve the clients, Pakistan became the training ground for these Mujahideen fighters to help them fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. On top of that, Pakistan would also provide the land route for the supply shipments that used to arrive from the United States, and then it used to go to Afghanistan. And when this arrangement was made, it gave the United States 3 superb advantages. Number 1, no matter how many people die from the Mujahideen groups, the US government does not have to answer to anyone. Number 2, instead of paying hefty salaries to the American army soldiers, they just have to provide guns, ammunition, and a bit more money to train the Mujahideen men. And lastly, just like an American company can fire a software service company and go to another one without worries, America can just cut off the funding to these groups and go to another group to execute their task. And when this kind of arrangement is made, America is able to execute its task at far lesser risk and far lesser cost. And secondly, Pakistan makes money regardless for actually giving permission and access to the United States. And guess what? After the Afghan-Soviet war ended, the Mujahideen fighters are the ones that eventually got together and went on to form another group called the Taliban in 1994. Fun fact is that Pakistan trained not just Taliban, but Al-Qaeda, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and a lot more groups to cause chaos for the Soviet Union in the Middle East, Kashmir and even Punjab. And it's not me who's saying this, but Pervez Musharraf, the military general who turned president of Pakistan himself, who has said this on record. Take a look.
एक रिलीजियस मिलिटेंसी हमने पाकिस्तान के हक में यहाँ इंट्रोड्यूस की सोवियट्स को निकालने के लिए। हम मुजाहिदीन लाए पूरी दुनिया से, हमने तालिबान को ट्रेन किया, उन्हें वेपन्स दिए, उनको अंदर भेजा। ओसामा बिन लादेन हमारा हीरो था।
Now, just to give you an idea about how exactly does Pakistan make money from all of this, according to the Center of Strategic and International Studies, since 9/11 attack in 2001, Pakistan has been the beneficiary of something called the US Coalition Support Fund. This fund is used to reimburse Pakistan for the US military use of infrastructure like ports, railways, roads and airspace. And this is being done so that the United States can prosecute the war in Afghanistan and other counter-terrorism operations around this space. This CSF for Pakistan has been as high as $1.2 billion per year, and close to 2018 it was $900 million per year. Furthermore, $335 million was given by the United States for humanitarian assistance. This is how Pakistan turned someone else's war into its own business. And this is where the twist came in. As we all saw, Taliban and Al-Qaeda became more powerful than they thought. Many other terror groups also started smuggling drugs in and out of Pakistan. Militancy in Pakistan increased, and soon enough, Pakistan itself started to get affected because of these groups. And this did not just tarnish their global image and made them look like a terrorist nation, but also started repelling foreign direct investments, and more importantly, it also started eroding into the existing industries. A classic example of the same is the cricketing industry.
The Sri Lankan team bus was on its way to the Gaddafi Stadium when they were ambushed by masked terrorists.
The Sri Lankan players were airlifted out of the Gaddafi Stadium, which had become their temporary refuge. Other sides have cancelled Pakistan tours over security concerns. This the biggest blow yet to the country's #1 sport.
In 2009, a bunch of gunmen attacked the Sri Lankan players who were touring Pakistan. And as soon as this happened, the cricketing industry of Pakistan collapsed. Why? Because ICC stripped them of the permission to host the 2011 World Cup. All countries agreed to not play in Pakistan, and from there on, no international tournaments and hardly any international match has been held in Pakistan. Similarly, the tourism industry of Pakistan collapsed, foreign investments started fading away, and many other sectors drastically got affected. So by the time Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif came into power in 2013 and 2018, Pakistan was already very tight on finances. So guess what? Here's where our dear friend shows up. And just like it did for Sri Lanka, it starts offering over generous loans for Pakistan, and specifically for this port called the Gwadar port. Now this port is very important for Pakistan because Karachi and Qasim ports are operating at near full capacity and they've got very less room for expansion. But Gwadar is set to handle 1 million tons of cargo annually with a significant industrial, oil and transportation infrastructure. Now just like Sri Lanka, since Pakistan did not have the finances to build its own port, China offered an over-generous loan for the Gwadar port. And as usual, China is doing this not to help Pakistan, but to actually take over the assets using its debt trap strategy. And as you know from the Sri Lanka episode, how does a debt trap work? Step number 1, China extends an over-generous loan to an economically weaker nation. Step number 2 is conditions, wherein China charges heavy interest and asks them to pay back in 10 to 15 years as compared to the global standards of 28 to 30 years of payback span. And lastly, the entire construction would be done by a Chinese company with Chinese workers, by which the money actually flows back to China. But on paper, the weak country owes a huge debt to China along with interest. And then comes step 3. Since the loan and interest is too much for the weak countries to pay back, China takes over the asset and uses it for its own purposes. In this case, Pakistan owes China not 1, not 2, but $24.7 billion in debt to China. And these loans are said to have an exorbitant interest rate of 4.1% as compared to global standards of just 1 to 2%. And they built not just Gwadar port, but 26 more projects in Pakistan, including solar projects, rail projects, highways, hydro projects, ports, and even fiber optic cables running from Pakistan to China. And by the way, China has already taken over the Gwadar port from Pakistan on a 40-year lease. But what blew my mind is that, in spite of the finances being in such terrible state, Imran Khan was still rolling out insane subsidies that were bleeding the coffers of the nation. But the question over here is, what the hell does China get from all of these? Well, that's where the episode 3 of this series comes in. But for now, let's come back to Pakistan. Because of these bad loans and investments, Pakistan's external debt other than China amounts to $65 billion. This is how, because of an extremely unstable government, by involving itself into the dirty business of war brokering, by getting into the jaws of a cunning dragon, and with reckless subsidies during an existing cash crunch, Pakistan is in such a pathetic state that it does not have a good reputation at the international level, it is not at all attractive for foreign companies or investors, and more importantly, it is under so much debt that IMF itself is doubtful of bailing it out. As a result, Pakistan is facing one of the worst economic crises in its history. And this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that are the lessons that we need to learn from Pakistan's failure. Before we move on, I want to thank our partners Hirect for supporting our content. People's startup economy is booming in India, and now since it's the appraisal season, you all must be eagerly waiting for your hikes and increments, right? But you know what? As much as these appraisals are important, it is equally important to understand that a great work environment is where you're valued and appreciated, a place where you must have the liberty to make decisions, and more importantly, you should have a work-life balance. At the same time, you must also get enough opportunities to showcase your skills, because after all, that is how you're going to experience career growth. And I personally feel that it's way more important to focus on your career hike instead of just salary hike. But if all of these things are missing in your current job, you can switch to a better job using the Hirect app. Hirect is India's first direct hiring app wherein you can directly chat with the startup founders and CEOs without any middlemen, without any HR agencies or consultants. All you need to do is just click the special link in the description, download the app, and this financial year, as they say at Hirect, career hike karke to dekho. Moving on, the first lesson we need to learn from Pakistan is that no matter how much political rivalry exists between political parties inside the country, the ultimate focus of the rivalry must always be towards the development of the nation and not just about eliminating the opposition. In this case, we saw that while political parties and military entities were busy overthrowing each other, the economics of the country went for a toss. So always keep an eye on the political parties so that they don't keep reversing the good things that the previous party has done, because if that happens, it's only going to lead to destructive development. And this applies to everything from laws to tax regulations to even infrastructure projects. Lesson number 2. In geopolitics, your allies are never your friends. So choose to work for each of them very, very carefully, because it wouldn't take 2 seconds for them to abandon you and go against you. In this case, Pakistan unnecessarily got into the proxy war in Afghanistan, and today, while the US Army has gone back home, it has caused an irreversible damage to the reputation of Pakistan at the global level. And lastly, always be careful with Chinese products. That's all from my side today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye. And don't forget to download the Hirect app from the link in the description.